Hey guys, Aaron Zagarba here, and today in this video we are going to be going over the artist Leland Kirby and one of his famous music projects, Everywhere at the End of Time. Let's get started. Background on James Leland Kirby. Born May 9th, 1974 in Stockport, England, he started to produce and create music in 1997 under the V/VM test label. He composes as an electronic music artist. In the late 1990s, he began to work on his most influential projects, the Caretaker. The main idea behind this project was the use of 1920s and 30s ballroom music that had inspired him from The Shining. In 2016, he would begin his most ambitious project, Everywhere at the End of Time, where the album of this series is a stage, where each album of this series is a stage of dementia. There are a lot of video essays on YouTube that go in depth about how the music affects you and how it was made. One of his most notable works is An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, which is incorporated into the series of Everywhere at the End of Time. In the beginning stages of the album, Kirby was inspired by the haunted ballroom in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. He then would create an album under the same name, The Haunted Ballroom, and parts of this would later be incorporated into Everywhere at the End of Time. Throughout this haunting album, there are many different musical elements. These songs are stretched, dragged, misshapen, and snipped. In the first song, It's Just a Burning Memory, we hear what seems to be like brass instruments that are carrying the melody of this song. Throughout the album, the pacing and cadence changes drastically and is distorted in many ways, representing confusion and degradation. The tempo becomes slower and slower and becomes more degraded as the album continues. And of course, we can see this. The Just a Burning Memory is actually the same tune of Al Boli's Heartaches, which we'll talk about later on. Everywhere at the End of Time. Everywhere at the End of Time is a music project by James Leland Kirby. It is about the life of a dementia patient. At first, everything seems okay, but as the 6-hour album goes on, yes, it is 6 hours, it becomes more and more distorted, representing the forgetting in dementia. This is the full 6-hour long album in its complete entirety. This is a very depressing album to listen to, so listen to it with care. And of course, I also left It's Just a Burning Memory. The entire song of the first song we get in the album is from 00 to 3:33. So that is the timestamp right there. This is a 6-hour album, and if you do want to listen to it, it is very depressing and very soul-crushing, so you really want to be in a good mood to listen to this, because it is a very, very depressing piece. Ivan Seal. Ivan Seal's art for the album covers. Now, these are the album covers that were made by Kirby's friend, Ivan Seal, and they actually collaborated when making these projects, and each 6 individual pieces of art actually coincide with each individual album, which is later basically combined together into one album, essentially, thus creating over 6 hours of music, essentially. This is the artwork for the albums that comprise Everywhere at the End of Time. These artworks were created by Ivan Seal, a friend of Kirby. They help to perfectly represent each stage of dementia, accompanied by the music. These artworks are beautiful and disturbing all at the same time, especially with the context of dementia. Each one was originally released from 2016 to 2019 and was not released all at once. Kirby did it this way to give the listeners a sense of progression of Alzheimer's. And of course, he released it from 2016 to 2019, spreading them out, I think, between 6 months of each other. And of course, once again, just to state it, he did this to represent the progression of Alzheimer's and dementia. It's Just a Burning Memory. This is the first song that we hear in Everywhere at the End of Time, and it helps to represent the good times of someone's life before dementia. This is just stage 1 and represents the first stage of dementia. The song only has very light pops and crackles to represent the age of the person and their state of mind. This song is based on Alboli's Heartaches. Now, this is only one of the many songs in Stage 1, just to give more extra context. And there are multiple songs that are all kind of ballroom-esque music, and they're all meant to represent the good times, essentially, of someone's life. And they're older songs, so they generally will make you think that, okay, this is the experience of an older person, this is much older music, and of course it gets your brain to think more about it, and it's very calming kind of music, ballroom-esque, definitely not very, like, excitable, but definitely slow dance kind of music, that you can kind of hear, and there's a lot of songs kind of put into here, but of course Just a Burning Memory is actually seen or heard multiple times throughout this album. And by the way, this is based on Alboli's Heartaches, which the original song when he made it was him playing the guitar and him singing, and there's actual lyrics, but this version is essentially pretty much, as far as I can tell, all brass instruments being played, and then a lot of distortion added by Kirby, but it is the same tune nonetheless. Albert Alec Bowley was a British vocalist who was popular during the 1930s in England. He was born in Maputo, Mozambique on January 7th, 1898, and he died April 17th, 1941. Two of his most popular songs were Goodnight Sweetheart and The Very Thought of You. Now, throughout Alboli's life, he actually moved to multiple places and traveled to multiple places such as South Africa and Germany and stuff like that. So he was kind of a little bit of everywhere. So he did get to have his influence in multiple places around the world. He also went to India and a couple other places, and yeah, it's just really interesting to think about it that way. And he actually died at a fairly young age, because he only lived from 1898 to 1941. He was a part of the inspiration of Kirby's entirety of Everywhere at the End of Time, which he uses his song Heartaches, or the tune of it, which is heavily modified, throughout the entirety of Everywhere at the End of Time. Or at least parts and bits of it. Yeah, it really helps represent that, and the whole idea of the degradation of the mind and stuff like that. The other stages of Everywhere at the End of Time. There are 6 stages of this entire album, at least when all the albums are put together. They all represent a different stage of dementia, and even some of the song titles represent this as well, such as A Losing Battle Raging, Glimpses of Hope Through Trying Times, Stage 4 Post-Awareness Confusions, and the most horrifying of them all, Stage 5 Advanced Plaque Entanglements. All of this culminates together to create the perfect representation of life with dementia, as at the very end of this album it becomes a wall of sound, and then it turns into an angelic choir, and after that, complete silence, possibly representing the minute of silence at funerals. And of course, all these, if you can even call it songs, at the later stages, it is essentially walls of sound and distorted music that a lot of it becomes completely unrecognizable. There are a lot of parts throughout this, I think through Stage 4 and maybe 3, if I'm remembering correctly, where essentially you have these essentially multiple songs and clips from multiple songs all coming together at completely random intervals, which perfectly describes how people are reacting to this if you were to have dementia or Alzheimer's or any of those other afflictions of forgetting. It all combines together to show that you just can't remember things correctly, and you might have even a sense or a moment where you might think that I could possibly recognize it, and then for a moment, and then it just completely disappears, and you just can't comprehend what is happening. And then eventually it becomes these massive drones and walls of sound, and then eventually it turns to that angelic church choir or whatever, and then the moment of silence to represent the death of the person. The impact of Everywhere at the End of Time. This album has changed how many people think of dementia or Alzheimer's, and it allowed people to step in the shoes of a patient struggling with this affliction. Kirby's song, It's Just a Burning Memory, is used a lot in a lot of nostalgic and eerie video creations, such as being associated with The Backrooms, which is an internet horror story about empty places. This also greatly changed how my thoughts on dementia and its effects, because it gets you to think about how horrible this disease is. It is also talked about in many video essays on YouTube that go into detail about it and its effects. And there's a lot of video essays that talk about it. And of course, I plan to upload this to YouTube, but the original reason for it being slides in this video is actually because this was a thing that I had to create for a class that I'm doing in college, but I also wanted to upload it to YouTube. So this is kind of the end bit of the video, but just to kind of explain it even more, there's a lot of the songs in this is associated with the concept of liminal spaces and empty places and abandoned things, because it was obviously ripped by other people, ripped off, and used in many other compilations in the internet. But it has changed the internet and how the internet views things, because it is so heavily associated with the idea of forgetfulness and forgetting and nostalgia and memory and all that kind of stuff. And of course the Backrooms represents a lot of that as well. Of course, when I created this, I had to make sure that the Backrooms was explained really simply, because there's probably a decent amount of people that might see this video that probably know a little bit more about the Backrooms concept. But basically, yeah, all of this kind of comes together and culminates to create a whole new way of thinking. Once he finally released it and people started looking at this and realizing dementia more, because a lot of times it is in the backs of people's minds, and people don't normally tend to think too much about it until it is directly affecting them in some way, whether it is physically affecting them or affecting a friend or family member. But yeah, that is kind of the video. I also put the links, and I'm going to put the links in the YouTube video description as well. This was just a short video on Everywhere at the End of Time, and it definitely doesn't do it justice. I hope to make a full-on video essay, but I hope that this is kind of like my building block that I can work off of. And also, just like I said, since I'm uploading this to YouTube, I am going to essentially, hopefully, make a longer version of this. But this had to be done because I needed something to be made for my final exam for my music class. So I put this all together, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it kind of, maybe even introduced some of y'all to this, to Leland, Kirby, and Everywhere at the End of Time. But most likely a lot of y'all probably at least know about it. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.